We're not just dealing with a 1 week period or 2 week period here, that this is now going into a third week and with further decisions to be taken.
Announcing new financial support and an extra 300,000 vaccine doses for the state, Scott Morrison stressed the national flow-on effect of the latest outbreak.
What is happening in Sydney just doesn't have implications for Sydney. What is happening in Sydney has very serious implications not only for the health of Sydney-siders, but also for the economy of Sydney, but also the economy of New South Wales and indeed the national economy.
While Sydney tries to avoid extending the lockdown beyond 3 weeks, the rest of Australia remains vulnerable to similar outbreaks. But as more of us get vaccinated, how much longer should we expect such drastic measures to be necessary? Hannah Sinclair reports.
Please come through.
This will go straight onto your MyGov immunisation record. So we're good to go, okay? Just get you to roll your sleeve up a little more for me.
At the Claremont Showgrounds in Perth's suburbs, people are being vaccinated on a mass scale 7 days a week.
Yesterday was reported another record day of vaccinations, 1 million doses in just over a week, in 8 days, and we are not far from hitting that target.
I just think the only way we're going to get out of this is just if everyone makes sure they go and get themselves vaccinated, because lockdowns they don't work for like a long-term option.
Perth has emerged from its third snap lockdown in 5 months, and many here hope vaccination will see some freedoms restored.
That's what we're all here for, isn't it? To return to some kind of normal routine and normal life. I've got 3 children. And I want them to go back to school. I want them to have their routine, to be able to go to their friends' houses, to go to the park and play.
Let's get all this done. Let's get over it and let's get on with life. You've got to feel sorry for people that, are in lockdown more so than what we are.
On the other side of the country, millions of Sydney-siders have been ordered to stay at home in an effort to quash an outbreak of the Delta variant. The lockdown has been extended until at least next Friday.
We don't want to prolong the lockdown. We don't want to see Sydney or New South Wales go in and out of lockdown until we have the vast majority of our population vaccinated.
Australians were originally told to lock down so hospital systems could prepare and to flatten the curve. But the pursuit of zero COVID has meant they've been used for smaller outbreaks.
Ideally, you don't use lockdowns unless they're a last resort. They really back up your contact tracing. But what we're seeing now with the latest variants is we're now pushed further with our contact tracing, and so lockdown has once again come into our methods of trying to control that outbreak.
Lockdowns most definitely come at a very serious cost. There are no good options. And what we've learned is an aggressive suppression approach delivers better civil society, better economy, clearly better health outcomes than choosing a more relaxed approach.
730 has analysed how many days residents in capital cities have spent under stay-at-home orders, excluding the first lockdown back in March last year. People in Melbourne have spent at least 129 days in lockdown. While Sydney is almost 2 weeks into a citywide lockdown, many residents on the northern beaches spent around 22 days in lockdown over Christmas. Perth and Brisbane have had 3 short lockdowns each. Darwin and Adelaide have had 1.
Our research shows that lockdowns are effective at reducing the spread of the coronavirus.
Researcher Toby Phillips moved back to Melbourne from the UK earlier this year. He runs a project with Oxford University looking at how governments around the world have responded to COVID and how strict the measures are.
So we're looking at over 180 countries. Those policies range from school closures, stay-at-home orders, contact tracing and mask mandates.
The The data shows Australia sitting towards the middle of the pack in terms of the overall stringency of its response. The most strict countries throughout the pandemic have included Argentina and India, while the least strict at certain times have been countries like Taiwan and Thailand. Where Australia stands out is in its move to ban citizens from returning home from India. No other country is known to have done that.
We don't even have a way to record that on our data scale. It's not part of our system because we just didn't expect to ever see that.
Australia is also rare in terms of what triggers a lockdown.
New Zealand and China are also in this group. Virtually every country in the world is not taking the zero COVID strategy.
Professor Catherine Bennett says outbreaks from more infectious variants are becoming harder to control, even with lockdown.
It's getting harder and harder to maintain that COVID zero position. We're seeing more crossovers into community, and so that's the real effort. Now it's just holding off for as long as we can to get the vaccine rolled out.
WA Premier Mark McGowan has warned of a permanent hard border with New South Wales if the Sydney outbreak isn't controlled.
The alternative is that if you bring down borders whilst a state has the virus running wild, well then you'll import the virus and then we'll have to lock down. So I think what I'm saying is a statement of the bleeding obvious to most people across the community.
It's the trepidation of not knowing when anything is going to happen.
Liam O'Malley has performed with the West Australian Symphony Orchestra for 10 years. For him, border closures and lockdowns have meant cancelled shows and increased uncertainty.
When something is prepared so far in advance to get shut down literally on a moment's notice is such a difficult thing to then deal with.
But Liam says Australia's strict approach has also meant he was working while many other musicians couldn't.
I think at times you sort of got to look forward to returning to some sort of normalcy. We want to have that audience out there reacting to how we're playing such a different experience.
As the number of cases in Sydney continues to rise, Professor Brendan Crabb of the Burnett Institute is urging New South Wales to stay the course.
Failure is not an option for New South Wales or for Australia. We don't have a high enough of our percentage of our population vaccinated. As awful and painful as it is, the not doing it is vastly worse. This will be nothing like Victoria's second wave. This is achievable.
New South Wales has always been bold and courageous in terms of our attitude to how we deal with COVID-19, but we have to accept that Delta is very different to anything we have seen before.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.